Before I get started, maybe what we can do is do a quick intro of our panelists. That way that everybody who's here who doesn't know them has a chance. So perhaps you have Luigi, okay. You can start saying a little bit, like 30-second pitch as to what you do.
Okay. I'm Luigi, and I'm the founder of L Venture Group. L Venture Group is a listed company on Italian stock exchange, and we invest in venture capital. And we finance Enlabs. Enlabs is an accelerator here, based here in Rome, inside the Termini station.
Excellent.
I'm Gian Paolo. I'm a member of the regional parliament of the region of Lazio, and I follow issues as startups and creative industries, and I've been doing in the last 2 years since I've been elected.
Thank you. So the topic that we're going to talk about is the Italian ecosystem, how it's been developing, and getting opinions from both the panelists on the topic. Before we go into that, I'm going to just delve quickly into variables that in our travels as Seedcamp since 2007, we have seen as key drivers of local ecosystems and how they evolve. The first one is the local concentration of founders and other ecosystem players, meaning whenever we have seen that an ecosystem has lots of little offices popping up in the same neighborhood, the speed at which ideas get exchanged happens. This is in London called the Old Street area or Tech City. You can go to a cafe and you'll see a lot of people there, and that allows for the speed of exchanging of ideas. The second thing is the local support from the community towards founders. This includes everything from the friends, from the family, how people see an entrepreneur, whether it's a sexy role, if it's a rock star type role, or if it's I couldn't get a job at a corporate kind of role. And that also changes the ambitions of young founders into starting their own company. Then it's the quality of the local education and engineering training. But frankly, most countries in Western Europe have sufficiently capable engineering capability, so that's always something that's inherently latent in any ecosystem. The next one is availability of HR talent and immigration reform. Countries that have immigration policies that allow foreigners to come here and work on their ideas and have ease of access to bring in other people as well. So if you're starting a company in a country that allows you to import talent if you need it, has been a big driver of success for startups wanting to stay in a specific geography. Another one is access to successful mentors or serial entrepreneurs. Obviously, the younger the ecosystem is, the less there are, but as it matures, it becomes increasingly an accelerator for inspiration for young founders. A strong and growing media presence, and I am not talking about generalist publications. I am talking about specific publications that highlight heroes, that highlight accomplishments, that talk about the stories, because these things are the inspiration for everybody in the ecosystem. And as the famous joke goes, if a tree falls in a forest and no one is there to hear it, did it even make noise? So having an ecosystem with mature tech media is important. Access to infrastructure. Wi-Fi is pretty much as much of a requirement these days as water, electricity, or anything else. So any city that has a proliferation of access to internet, fast internet, can start becoming a backbone for providing services to the world. Access to experienced capital is another big aspect that drives growth in an ecosystem. Now, what I mean is not just capital, I mean experienced capital. It doesn't have to be a lot. It just has to be capital that isn't necessarily approaching venture finance with a view the way that you would approach a real estate deal or a private equity deal or a banking debt loan. It's a very different approach to assessing risk and providing cash for equity. Tax relief for investors is another one. Just promotes people putting money in. Tax relief for successful founders. If you make money here, can you keep it? access to experienced legal counsel. You'd be surprised how many lawyers do not understand the difference between venture law, commercial law, intellectual property law, and that can be a huge issue. And the simplification of local legal systems. If a founder has to spend the first year just understanding how to incorporate, how to hire somebody, what are the ins and outs of firing somebody, these all things can slow down an ecosystem or speed it up. And the majority of the ecosystems that I have seen, including the United Kingdom, that have done a really good job of promoting the ecosystem are those that have taken all these things that I've spoken about and really did a good job of trying to reform the country so that founders have a chance. So with that summary of kind of the things that I have seen across my travels, I'd like to open it up to the panel to maybe comment on where you think the state of the Italian ecosystem is.
Well, first news is very good. The good news is I think we have almost all of these ingredients in our system. Particularly in Rome, we have 300,000 students. We have great people in engineer education. We have a lot of mentors. For example, in Enlabs, we have about 50 mentors based in Rome, Milano, and outside. We have so people, mentors, we have money. We have the law. Now we have this fantastic law that is help investors. They have a fiscal advantage when an investor invests in startup. So in the end of the day, I think we have all the ingredients, but I don't think we have a leader in this moment to put together all these ingredients. We are trying, as Luis Enlabs and Venture Group, to create our ecosystem, and particularly, I think, to create a financial track, because I think in Italy is a really very important smart money. Do you know smart money is not simple money, is people who help you and give you also money. But for us, it's really very important venture capital money, because we don't have venture capital money. So our problem is the big money. Here, from my experience, is very simple. In this day, we can say it's a simpler if you have to raise 100, 200K in Italy now than in London. But if you pass, I think 500,000K is really very, very difficult. We have in Italy only 3-4 venture capital. So what are doing now? As a venture group, we are increasing our capital because we need to invest at least 1 million euro in a startup. This is the amount of money we need. With this money, the startup can move in Europe and get European money. So I think in this moment, we are in a great moment here in Italy, but we are a big lack of money.
So you've given some very good reasons why. Now, maybe you can help highlight the things that could improve.
Well, first of all, I want to limit myself to the ecosystem of this region, which is the one I know best. In my view, there is a problem, basically a problem of culture. This is a region where basically risk averse. The Italian culture is a culture that has got towards risk basically cautious attitude. And in this reason, more than any other reason, any other region, if you want, because this is a region of the bureaucracy, this is a region of the administration. And therefore, here you have to break two molds of culture. The culture of the private sector, that is the culture of risk and entrepreneurship, and the culture of the public sector, which is basically a top-down culture, which is fundamentally averse to what Ashone was saying, so the concept of disruption. Basically, to have innovation introduced, you need disruption, and this is a region where this culture of disruption is very much a foreigner. as usually happens, the private sector comes first, and so we are witnessing here something very interesting, that is a group of innovators from the private sector. Luigi is one of them, Augusto Coppolo is another one. The experience of Innovation Lab is something that also, thank you to the support of the province of Rome, has been established itself as an important tool to introduce entrepreneurship at the level of the young people. I would say that the public sector still has got to do something in this direction, in the direction to accompany the private sector. But luckily, I think, the gap between the private sector and the public sector in terms of understanding the process and in terms of acting is not that enormous as it has been in this country or in this region in other moments. That is, we are a bit behind, but we understand exactly where the things must go, and we are, in a way, coming behind the private sector at what I think a speed that, at least for the public administration, is reasonable. I don't say is extremely good, because to be extremely good, you would have to walk at the same pace as the indication that we receive from the private sector. In this domain, I think that basically we want to focus on three issues. The first one is resources, and here we have just adopted an innovative support for new ventures, in the sense that is a support that eliminates the public sector as an indicator, as the people who picks winners, which is a typical defect of the public administration. We have basically said to ourselves, there is a group of incubators and accelerators operating in this area, so we basically will provide funds to enterprises that will have been chosen by these people. And this is what the concept that we are applying to how we want to finance enterprises. The second aspect where we have done something, but we need to do more, is visibility. In my view, you need a public sector which is a fundamental interplay between what happens in this area and, for example, public broadcasting service. Why the stories of the successful startuppers are not broadcasted in the regional television? Why there is not a program for startuppers to go in schools and show their cases of excellence? This is something we want to move and we want to work on. And the third aspect for me is places. That is, without the ambition or without the dream of establishing something at Tech City, I think we have to move into creating spaces with a clear logo, with a clear identification, where startuppers could go, where mentors could go, where venture capitals could go, and actually create an ecosystem. Let me finish with that. I think that is essential, and what we are trying to do with this commission startup that we established 6 months ago. Pratesi is the president and he is here. We have been trying to emerge the reality of what's happening in this city, in this region, emerge. So this indicate how we want to do. We want to do it together, for example, with private actors, with great enterprises that have got incubator schemes that never talked among each other and never talked to the public sector. And so we want to provide mechanisms to foster links among the different players in the ecosystem.
Thank you for that. I want to ask the panelists the controversial question that I asked Giuliano this morning, but I want to hear your point of view from a ecosystem builder point of view. If there are two philosophies around how to build an ecosystem, one is you get everybody that's really good to stay and build value in Italy, and you hope that that is sufficient through your initiatives to make the ecosystem grow, or you find the people that have most potential and you push them out to the best programs, whether it be in Silicon Valley, New York, or London, and you hope that they do really well so that that story works its way back to Italy and will bring that capital back into Italy, but in a longer term play. Which one of those two philosophies do you think works better and why?
Okay. In my opinion, I think that the second one, I think, no, really, or the first. Okay, my opinion is we can create a startup here in Italy, and I think is a really good moment. But the startups must be connected with the world. So what I mean that perhaps during our acceleration program or immediately late, our startup have to move outside because the market, first of all, we don't invest in Italian startups. Italian startups, I mean, startups that are looking for only Italian customers. Internet is a really huge opportunity to scale in the world. So we need people with this kind of mentality. And so I think it's very important for us that our startup move outside. Outside, it doesn't mean we move all the team, but perhaps the business development, because the market is not only in Italy. And after when the startup will grow up, we will have two solutions. First of all, the team could be based in Italy, or the team are not based in Italy. In the end of the day, we are investors, so we are looking for increase the value of the startup. We cannot be jealous to keep the startups in our office, in our city. So this is I think my opinion. And how are we acting? First of all, we are trying to connect with other accelerators. So if you enter in Enlabs, perhaps you have a very fast track to enter in another accelerator in another part of the world. And second, we would like, this morning I was speaking with an Italian entity to open immediately a small office in London, in New York, and Singapore, because we have immediately to send our startups outside. Our startups have to make business in the world. So I repeat this mantra. So I think this is my idea.
Okay. Your view?
Well, my view is that there is no alternative between the two aspects, in the sense that if, in my role, if you want, as a policymaker, I would strengthen the basis of startups here, because I want I think that startups could really have a triggering effect in changing and moving this culture, this risk-averse culture of this specific area of the country, of this specific country. I would force very much into putting startups in contact with public administration, in contact with other enterprises. I would root the startup business here, and at the same time, I would pick the best startups, the most promising startups, and incentivate and promote their going into other experiences, into fostering alliances with other startups in other countries. In this sense, I think that, for example, a region should very much stay into the whole issue of alliance with other regions at the European level, understanding which regions like ours are putting their aim to startups and creative industries or whatever, or other lines of business in the startup sector, and really focus and have alliances on this respect. In this sense, just to close, I think that to have this disruptive effect, I think that there must be people like me and some others in the public sector. I think also the private sector, and especially startuppers, should make, or association of startuppers, should make an effort to understand that the environment where they are is an environment that is not ready for their message. And therefore, to make an effort to translate their language into the needs of the people listening. Because if you are not able to build a bridge, there will never be a dialogue. So I think that association connecting startups should do this specific effort. For example, it was interesting because I was looking at a lot of your presentations with the eye of how much this could be useful for the public sector in terms of cutting costs, in terms of improving the service. All are shown as ideas about health, where health is the main item of the budget of the Lazio region. And possibly, I think one of the missions that we should do together is actually finding formats to have people say something and on the other side listening, like pilot projects, bringing experiences of success in other countries here. That is something immediately activate and that does not scare, because disruption scares.
Yeah. Okay, excellent. Do we have questions for anybody in the audience? Okay, we had one hand go up really quickly.
Stand up. Hi, I would ask Dr. Manzella, what's the main obstacle in putting in contact startups and the public sector? Because I've seen that there are many projects with social and crowd-based aims that can be really relevant for the public sector. So is it just a matter of language, as you said before, or except stereotypes, is there any other factor that is an impediment in this?
I think that the main impediment is actually to find, in my view, to find a common ground of dialogue between startups and the public administration. For example, if I would be a startup association, I would invest some money, or maybe doing it together and maybe getting grants, etc., on tailoring under the legal standpoint how startup intuitions can be transformed into services offered by the public administration. Because very often you have the public administration which says it's a good intuition, but then the engineering of this intuition into the legal framework becomes difficult, because we live obviously in a country with an extremely heavy legal framework. What I think is, my intuition is the following: as much as a meeting like that would have been inconceivable 5 years ago, I think that also it would have been inconceivable 5 years ago on the public sector side to have such an attention to the phenomenon and the willingness of having these startup intuitions into the machine. But I think that where a lot of things stop, even though there are positive cases, for example, Kurami, I hear that has just entered into an agreement with the Comune di Roma, and before they had a pilot project with the province. So there are some aspects, but in my view, these reflect the fact that there is a will also from the public sector, also for purely egoistic reasons. That is to say, I'm using something which is done in this area that by a young person, so I'm helping. I think that there is a great will, and that very often there is this legalistic aspect which lacks.
Okay, so we have lunch now? But before we go to lunch, I want to add one additional point to my list of things that drive an ecosystem. In every ecosystem, there's usually 1 or 2 or 3 guys that organize events, that put together parties, that bring together groups of founders, and that guy or those group of guys do a great job of being the catalyst for change. And in that spirit, I want to thank the founders that are here, each of which are spokes in that hub. Nicola Mattina, who helped organize this, and all the other heroes of the Italian ecosystem that are going to be the spokespeople for Italy here and abroad.